I've always been under the impression that if it's your fault, it's your fault. If it ain't my fault, it ain't my fault. There's truth to that. I'm not going to skirt around that. There's truth. I'm not saying take responsibility for somebody else's fault. I'm not saying, okay, it's their fault and I'm just going to cover them up and just, no, I'm not. No. I'm not saying that at all. I think that's where my frustration came from. That's where my lack of understanding came from. It's like, no, I'm not going to take responsibility for something that somebody else did or said. No, I'm not. Truth is, we shouldn't. Let's be straight. But there's a deeper underlying meaning to that statement. It doesn't mean that. So what it basically means is that might not be your fault, but what could you do to make the situation better? Is there anything? Could you even ask yourself that question? Is there anything that I can do to make the situation better? If you can't even ask yourself that question, you're not going to get the wisdom behind the statement. You're not going to understand, have a deeper understanding of the meaning behind the statement. You won't, because you're so hung up on it ain't my fault. What can I do to make the situation better?
Fitting the system, underlying this problematic conditions. Y'all be falling for this fakery, dickery, die. TikTok, alien invasions, I'm really losing my patience. All these signs and gimmicks, y'all just be falling for it. Demons and blindfolds, I've been blinded this whole nation. Y'all just be dying for it. My eyes always focused. I give all my praise until he holds me. It's the God that broke within. He just trying to let us in.
What's up, family? What's up, family? This is the 150 podcast. I am your host, Coach Moon. Thank you so much for jumping in. This is episode 23, I believe. 23. I can't believe it that I am 23 episodes in. And I am excited about that, but more so excited I'm focused. I listen to a lot of things that encourage me, that prune me, so to speak, that gets all of the stuff out that doesn't need to be in, just to make sure that I'm growing. And one of the things I heard this week that really challenged me, but it was really good for me, was it's this podcast I listened to called the Social Proof Podcast. And one of the things that my man said on one of his advertisements that really stuck with me was, he said one of the things that helped him to grow and to succeed beyond what his expectations had laid for him was the fact that he stopped looking for views. He wasn't looking for views. He was looking to build. And I'm going to go into a strategy and all. You can go take a listen to his podcast if you want, but it was inspiring because a lot of times we want things to grow and to work according to our expectations. We expect something and we want it to happen. And I mean, who starts something and their expectation is not for it to work, not for it to move forward? Like, you don't start it if you don't think that it's going to move forward. So I'm saying that in connectivity with life too, though, not just with this podcast, but with life, because the difference between, this is my opinion, I believe this is true. The difference between something really helping you as an individual to grow and to become better in the different aspects of your life, but also to make an impact on others, is if whatever it is that you're doing has meaning beyond just the moment, just like the space that you're in. And that's hard a lot of times, because one of the things that I know that expectation does for us as a people is it kind of moves and maneuvers our thoughts around. We fluctuate. Sometimes we high, sometimes we low, sometimes we're in between. It's up and down. So this podcast is basically a podcast that, as y'all know, if you've been following me, is not going to scratch the surface. We like to go deep into things. Exploration. We like to explore. We want to go deep. We don't want to scratch the surface. A lot of times scratching the surface can lead to some things that make you feel good, but are you changing? And so I like to really explore topics that challenge us to change at our core. Not so much of changing others, but changing ourselves. Let me say this, though, because in light of all the stuff that's happening in the world today, it's easy to jump on a bandwagon, jump on a group's thought process and make it become yours. Everybody has their own way of exploring things and assimilating to things, which is basically saying, I'm going to join this, I'm going to join that, I'm going to become this, I'm going to become that. I think it's really important to explore a lot of the things that is happening in the world today and explore what our beliefs are, explore what we believe, explore what we want to represent. All those things are vitally important. I read every single day. Just had a great conversation with my son today, and the conversation I had was based around how to make yourself like seek things that don't just entertain you, but that make you whole across the board, that challenge you on the inside so that you can know what's going on around you and know how to respond as well. Instead of just, responding the way everybody else wants you to respond, you have some context or some content that you can actually grab and say, okay, this is important to me. And this is where I am basing how I'm going to respond. I'm not just going, oh, everybody else is doing it, so I'm going to do it. And the majority of us, not just kids, but adults, we do the same thing. So researching and understanding what's going on in your environment, and also being able to, not just through entertainment, but really let me say, edutain yourself, read. And I'm going to always emphasize that on this podcast, because back in the day, they say reading is fundamental. And that was a quote on posters and hold on. That's true. Reading is fun. It should be fundamental, this is something that is just standard. This is the baseline. This is what I do, because it opens your mind up to the possibilities around you. Without reading, it's just, and I'm not saying that there's not different ways to educate yourself. I listen to podcasts a lot of times. I also, read audiobooks or listen to audiobooks. There's a lot of ways. It's not just, we're not going to stamp it and lock it down to just one methodology. But I'm saying that because I really think a lot of times we posture ourselves and our response based off of just a lack of content or context a lot of times. So let me say that I do believe that we need to be exploring things and getting deeper into things around us so that we can be really on point when it comes down to how we respond to things. Instead of just parroting stuff, we know what's going on. But one of the things that I want to go back to is exploring ourselves, because a lot of times it's easy to explore everything else. It's easy to explore the popular topics that's going on. It's easy to advance ourselves in all of those things that make us feel like we're part of something. The social construct of just being around people in groups and the whole nine makes us feel whole. It's necessary. Social activities. We're social beings, but we can become over dependent on the social constructs around us. In my opinion, I really believe that we can, to the point where we don't develop a self-identity that is able to mature. Maturity is what I want to talk about today, y'all. Like I said, this podcast, we go deep. So I want to go a little deep into maturity, because a lot of times for myself, I know coming up, I really thought that I was mature. I'm not talking about just as a teenager growing up into a young man. I'm even talking about as an older gentleman. Like, I got gray hair in my hair. I'm not a young whippersnapper. I'm young. I'm 48 years old. I'm pushing 50. Okay. I'm thankful to be alive. Thank God to be alive. But just because, I heard something else, but I know this to be a fact as well. Just because you're a certain age doesn't automatically guarantee that you're going to be mature. That's a fact. I don't care what nobody say. I know some people that's older than me that's immature. And there's certain areas in my life, after really self-analyzing, I can honestly say, man, I've been immature in that area in my life. Very immature. So without any further ado, let's look at the definition of maturity, the actual definition of maturity. And then I want to dig a little deep into this particular topic. So the core definition of maturity is the state of being fully developed in mind, character, and judgment. It shows up in self-control. It shows up in emotional regulation. It shows up in accountability. It shows up in patience. Those three things go together big time, or four things. It shows up in discernment, being able to discern what to and not to do or say. The ability to see beyond the moment. I think that is the critical anchor that I want to set down right now. Being able to see beyond the moment, because I think all of those things really kind of hinge on that. There's so many areas in my life that I remember establishing like it's truth. Like nobody can challenge me on these things. You try to challenge me on these things, it's a wrap. We're going to debate. And my goal was to win. My goal wasn't to improve. My goal wasn't to explore. My goal wasn't to learn. My goal was to win. I want to win. So what's up? Let's talk. And I remember getting to conversations or debates where we would debate. I'm talking hours. I would take hours to debate people. And the truth is, the feeling that I got from it felt good most of the time. In my mind, I'm thinking I won a debate, even if we didn't come to a resolve. But the reality is, there was no real traction. If I'm being honest, there was no real traction from the debate because the goal of the debate for me was to win. It wasn't to grow and to learn. One of the guys that I follow, I have several of his books, but he always talks about, he used this one term that I love. Dr. Cornel West is a gentleman that I'm talking about. And one of the things that he talks about all the time is having a hermeneutical humility. You may have heard me say that on this podcast, but the simple breakdown of that is interpretive humility. You have a sense of truth. You have a sense of understanding of the things that you're involved with, but you don't determine that, or you don't believe that all truth is established through your understanding. You got it now. But you are humble enough to admit and understand that there's a plethora of things that you may not understand, even in the things that you feel confident in speaking and talking about. And I think that is missing from society as a whole, is missing from the dominant mainstream type of conversation. A lot of times we focus so much on what we know or what we believe or what we have established as truth that we can't see outside of the box that we've created for ourselves. So we lock ourselves up and nobody can tell us anything now because we got the answer. We got the answers. And then it makes it even worse when you put it into a group dynamic. So now you got a group of people that believe this certain thing, that it cannot be analyzed, that it cannot be scrutinized, that it can't. And I'm not talking about, destroyed. They cannot be reconstructed or reverse engineered to the point now where you're strengthening your belief. You're strengthening your thought process. You're strengthening your opinion. And nobody can tell you anything at all now, for sure, because you got the backing of a group. And maturity. The reason why I'm speaking like this is because, I even still to this day am checked. I really believe that God checks me sometimes, a lot of times, when I think I have everything figured out in certain things. I got it figured out. And God is the master teacher. The creator is the master teacher. Where certain things will happen in your life and you're watching those things unfold. And we go back to maturity, the ability to see beyond the moment generally is not easy for the majority of people to do, to see beyond the moment. I mean, I've woken up before and I've walked past something that was on my floor or something, or maybe the edge of the bed, and kicked the bed. And it's one of the worst pains in the world. It's like, oh my gosh, that hurts. And I can't, I got to stop. My whole body cringes up. You know that moment. You know that moment when you're uncomfortable. Just think of that for a second. And it's like nothing in that moment is, I'm going to be all right. This hurts. That's all you focus on. The focus is on the pain and discomfort. It's natural. And the reason I'm speaking to that point is because that is, I think, one of the hardest obstacles to overcome when dealing with things in our lives is to see past the moment. And I don't care what it is. I'm not just talking about things that are considered good, always considered good. Oh, this is a good thing to happen. No, bad. Let me say bad. Bad. Oh, this is a bad thing to happen. Bad thing. Yes, we're going to talk about that too. But I'm talking even the good stuff. A lot of times the so-called, the blessings, I'm going to call them blessings for the sake of the point. A lot of the times the blessings that we get eventually alter into what could be considered a curse. Not because it was a curse, it was a blessing, but because we weren't mature enough to handle the blessing. We weren't mature enough to see what the moment was and not try to be defined by the moment, that we eventually lost sight of what was important in the grand scheme. The grand scheme is not being addicted to a moment. The grand scheme is understanding how to develop and advance on a consistent basis based off of wisdom. Wisdom is slow. And that's the hardest part, y'all. The hardest part, in my opinion, for older people and younger people alike is patience. Now, we talked about the bad, the kicking my foot. But okay, let's talk about something good. Let's really talk about that blessing that can be turned into a curse. There was a time some years ago, I remember my wife and I, we purchased 2 cars at one time. We thought it was the best deal in the world. We didn't think about the interest rate or anything like that. We just like, 2 cars, you can give us the opportunity. Our credit's good. We got good jobs. Let's go. We got it. Never forget. And we had a lot of kids in the house. And I remember having this feeling like we good, living life and not thinking about the impact that making bad financial decisions would have on this blessing. Long story short, a couple years go by and we fell into some real difficult times. Lost my job and the whole 9. Things happen. But most of the financial issues that happened because of faults of our own. Long story short, they came and got the cars. And I remember when they would come and pick the cars up, I felt like, dang, I'm a loser. I'm a daggone loser. How in the world do I get to a point where somebody come and take my car? The heck? I'm supposed to be better than that. I was beating myself down, y'all. So there's 2 extremes there. The first extreme was when I first picked up the car. You couldn't have told me it wasn't a blessing. I'm like, this is a blessing. Man, praise God. We got 2 cars. Let's go. And then you fast forward, you get to the end. It's like, man, this is a curse. I'm doubting myself. I'm condemning myself in the whole 9. These are 2 different extremes. And when I can fall back and look at them both, I can say, dang, I don't want to lean on any extreme, either side. I want to be able to be mature, which is, again, the one piece we're talking about is the ability to see beyond the moment. Does this mean that we can't enjoy ourselves? No. Does this mean that we can't be angry about certain situations that happen? No. Does this mean that we can't use the emotions that God gave us, being sad and all the other different emotions, happy, excited? No, it doesn't mean that. What it means is that we are self-controlled enough not to allow ourselves to become extreme in whatever it is that we're experiencing in life. And truth be told, that is hard. It's hard. I don't care what nobody say. It's hard. Is it doable to mature, to grow, and to, yes, it is, but it's hard. But it's the difference between where we are and where we're going to go, whatever that looks like, whether good or bad. It is the difference between where we are and where we're going to go. Okay, practice. So here are some practical applications to this maturity thing. So maturity. Pausing before we react. How many of us pause before we react? That will save us so much stress. That will save us so much future degradation of whatever it is that we're involved with. Choosing long-term benefit over short-term comfort. How many of us, is it easy for us to, is it, let me not say easy. Let me say, is it something we think about? Is it something that we think about before we get into something, whether it's a relationship? Yeah, I'm talking to relate. It could be a romantic relationship. It could be a friendship. It can be, anything in relation to social, connectivity, relational connectivity, financial, business related, business orientated, anything that you can connect to. Just think for a second. Do we think about the long term over the short term? I'm learning how to do that more in my life as an older gentleman. I'm learning how to analyze things, not based off of how I feel in the moment, but what I've seen in the past and how I've operated in the past and the results that I've gotten from not seeing the long term first. So I want to drop some wisdom to young people out there. Slow down. I know you might think you got the answers, and I know it might feel good, and I know you might have a little bit of wisdom with you. I do not knock young people in when it comes down to wisdom. There's some young people that they got their head on their shoulders right, but it doesn't mean that you don't have to also continue to learn, grow, and develop. I think it's natural, it's innate for young people to learn. So analyze your environment. Analyze the decisions you make before you make them, and I know that's hard to do for a lot of people. Let's talk even older people, because I don't want to leave older people out of this conversation. Even you, we need to slow down. One of the things that I've seen older people do, even older than me, over time, is they've learned how to use their finances better. I've seen people who are all over the place with the finance and learn how to use their finances better due to bumping their head in the whole nine. They make better financial decisions, but emotionally, they're all over the place. Emotionally, it's like, look, if you say something to them wrong, you look at them wrong, you say something. There's a couple people that I know in particular. I won't say any names, but my wife and I, we have a bunch of laughs about this. But one particular person swear that everything is against them. Everything. It's like this person, that person, all of these things are against them. No way in the world I'm gonna get around it. They make things up, which leads to the next thought process when it comes down to maturity. A lot of times it's so easy for us, going back to that whole thought of long-term versus short-term, to emphasize the short-term. And when we emphasize the short-term, it's easy for us to, in that thought process, think that, somebody attacking me. This is going on. That's going on. I can't even tell you how many times, even I myself, I've been on job situations where I'm like, look, I'm tired of this person. This person is attacking me. When they're asking me a question, like they're challenging something that it's okay to challenge, but I'm not seeing it that way. I'm seeing like you're attacking me. Why? Because I'm not just agreeing with what you're saying and moving on. Sometimes it's okay. In fact, many times, especially when you're talking about doing something that is worth anything, it takes time. It's okay to say, you know what? Let's challenge this. One of the things that I didn't value when I was younger that I really value now, I'm like a neat freak, y'all. I'm gonna be straight. I like things organized together. I mean, my wife will tell you, my kids will tell you, like, if you walk over to my desk and you move a pen and I can go away for a whole day, come back, somebody's on my desk. That's how I operate. That's how my mind functions. But I've allowed that a lot of times in my life to make me short-sighted to the point where I've messed certain things up, certain relationships up. I've needed to rebuild certain relationships. I've needed to rebuild certain frameworks in my life because everything had to be exactly the way that I wanted it to be, or I had a problem. If I can go back, I know a lot of older people say this. Some people say, oh, you don't want to say that because, you've gone through what you're going to know. I'm going to be straight, because sometimes I do analyze myself this way. And I say, man, if I can go back, I would have did this or that different. And one thing that I would definitely say, and this is some wisdom for y'all young people out there, is if I can go back to some of the ages that y'all are right now, one of the major things that I would have done was I would have valued relationships while I had them. I would have slowed my perspective down to the point where it wasn't about everything that I thought, everything that I felt, everything that I saw. I would have explored other personalities. I would have explored questions. I would have explored other perspectives. Short term over long term generally leads to really bad decisions, y'all. Really bad decisions. Taking responsibility without excuses. This is a hard one. We're going to have another podcast, another episode on this one, because there's a lot that I want to cover, and I'm not going to be able to cover it all in this time. But being able to take responsibility without excuses is hard. I've heard one of the hardest statements as I got older, and I wrestled with it for years. I still wrestle with it to a certain degree now in action. I'm not talking about in word, because we can say what we want to say, but in action, the feelings on behind the scenes, we know what's going on behind the curtains. And a lot of times behind the curtains, when it comes down to this statement, I got a problem. Just being transparent. I learned the importance of it, but let me just say the statement. It is basically take responsibility. I've always been under the impression that if it's your fault, it's your fault. If it ain't my fault, it ain't my fault. There's truth to that. I'm not going to skirt around that. There's truth. I'm not saying take responsibility for somebody else's fault. I'm not saying, okay, it's their fault and I'm just going to cover them up and just, no, I'm not. No. I'm not saying that at all. I think that's where my frustration came from. That's where my lack of understanding came from. It's like, no, I'm not going to take responsibility for something that somebody else did or said. No, I'm not. Truth is, we shouldn't. Let's be straight. But there's a deeper underlying meaning to that statement. It doesn't mean that. And when we see things at that, okay, let me just talk about what it means, and then I'll get back to what I was about to say. So what it basically means is that might not be your fault, but what could you do to make the situation better? Is there anything? Could you even ask yourself that question? Is there anything that I can do to make the situation better? If you can't even ask yourself that question, you're not going to get the wisdom behind the statement. You're not going to understand, have a deeper understanding of the meaning behind the statement. You won't, because you're so hung up on, it ain't my fault. What can I do to make the situation better? This is not more, this is most important, in my opinion, in relationships. Man, especially if you're married or if you have a relationship, a romantic relationship. Because one of the things that I've learned over time and still learning and still growing in is this whole concept of being able to be mature in marriage, in a marriage with the opposite sex. You know, they say women are from Mars, men are from Venus, or vice versa, whatever it is. But a lot of times it feels like that. I'm in a conversation with my wife and she'll say something, I'll say something, and I'm looking at 1 + 1 = 2. She's looking at A, B, C to Z, and I'm like, I'm thinking we're supposed to be on the same page, trying to get her on my page. She trying to get me on her page. And it's like, it doesn't work. But I've seen some amazing things happen, y'all. I'm gonna be straight with this. I've seen some amazing things happen when I took responsibility for only what I can take responsibility for, my side of the equation. So even if it was something that I felt like I wasn't wrong with, and it's the truth, I can bring up all these different reasons why, the whole nine, I have felt things literally shift in my wife's response to me if and when I took full responsibility for not so much of what she did wrong, but what I need to do to make things right. Oh, that's a hard one, y'all. That's an everyday learning because there's levels to the game. You do it one time and it's like, oh, that's a good feeling. But then you got to do it at a higher level and it becomes more challenging. The higher level becomes more challenging, but that's a part of maturity. One of the craziest things about life, and this is just what I believe. I've read scripture, the Bible a lot, all throughout my life. Been in church, I've been in different organizations, been around people, coached sports, and did a lot of community work. And it is so hard, y'all, to really see the depth behind maturity. It is on a consistent basis, because every day you wake up, maturity says, are you ready to train? Maturity says, are you ready to spar? Are you ready to go beyond what you learned yesterday? Are you ready to enhance what you learned the day before or the week before or the month or the year before? You ready to go to a different level? And to answer the call means that you are prepared to humble yourself and to be purified. No, we all heard the statement. We hear the statements. We know the whole thought process behind precious stones and different like gold and silver and the whole diamond analogy where it's in the ground, it gets tough. Yep. All those come into play because that is the physical nature of purification, the physical. But then there's a metaphysical behind it too. And that's connected to us. It's like, I don't understand why I have to go through certain things in order to get certain things, purification. And to be honest, like the scripture talks about how, and I have to go here because this is my foundation, y'all. How I heard a guy preaching today, and he was basically talking about the scripture when I think it was Paul or James said, think it not strange when things happen to you, trials and all these tribulations, the whole nine. But the book of James definitely talks about how the trying of your faith works patience. It says, let patience have a perfect work that you may be full, entire, and wanting nothing. I don't dig that, y'all. I'm just being transparent. It's not that I'm rejecting it. Like, I don't like it. No, it's I am not by default wanting to do that all the time. That's hard, y'all. It's like, how do you wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to be the bigger person? You wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to make the better decision. You wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to look at the long-term result over the short-term result when there's so much instant gratification around us. It's like, man, come on. It's counterculture to think that way. It's antithetical against our nature, man. Come on. I'm just being straight, y'all. But there's no way to mature without it. There's no way to mature without understanding that and accepting the challenge to face it every single day. A couple other practical things. Staying grounded when emotions rise. Being grounded. It's hard to do that too. If you like me, when your emotions rise, it's hard to get them back down. So how can we do the proactive work before they even go up? I think, again, it goes down to exercise. Come back to exercise in a minute, but admitting when you're wrong, saying I'm wrong. Man, some people, man, I saw this skit one time online. It was talking about, it was a man and it was a wife and the husband and wife. And the husband, he said, he wrote down, I'm sorry in the argument. And then the wife was just like, she ain't write nothing down. She was like, yep, okay, I'd accept your apology. It's funny. I know wives probably think the same thing about husbands. But the reality is this, like, being able to say you wrong, I'm wrong. It's hard sometimes because we get caught into our own ways and we don't want to say I'm wrong. It's a part of maturity. This is good, y'all, because this is more internal. And I'm going to end on this and we're going to come back in here. We want to go into some deeper truths behind maturity because I want to really focus myself and focus the conversation in an area and direction that is challenging to the point where I want to hear some feedback. I want to really get into the deeper levels of conversations with this maturity thing because it's hard. It's hard. But it's going to make us better, which when we become better, then the world becomes better. The world that we touch, the world that we go out and we affect. And we, people look at us and say, yeah, well, okay, what's going on with this person? This person is mature. Okay, I understand. Cool. Okay, all right. And there's some deeper levels. There's some spiritual levels. We're going to talk about the spiritual levels too. I'm going to put some scripture in here. We're going to also put some other books, different resources in here in this conversation, because I think a lot of times we struggle so much to move forward because of this particular topic. Can we move into growing and stretching ourselves beyond this, what's accepted as this is who I am. I ain't going to change nothing. I'm just going to be who I am. And that's it. And we might even say it like that, but the words or the actions that we perform on a daily basis say that. It say, man, whatever, I'm good. I ain't got to change. Please, I'm going to be me. And then we use like trauma. We use all these different things. We put them on top of it. We put them around it. We almost barricade that thought with all of the justification for what it is. Nope, whatever. This is it. And in my opinion, we lose the sight and the ability, man, to grow beyond where we've been. And I don't know about y'all, but that's my goal. That's my thought every single morning. And it's harder sometimes than it is others. But my goal every single morning is, Lord, help me to be better than I was yesterday. I want to be better than I was last year, better than I was 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5. I want to be better. I don't want to be the same. I don't want to stay in the same place. And that means we got to face certain things that we don't want to face. We got to slow down, learn how to regulate our emotions, learning how to see other people's perspective. My wife said, I'm really going to end on this. My wife said something to me that that was challenging, but it was good in the environment. We went on a date this weekend. We went to this vegan spot and we were eating vegan food and it was delicious. We had a great time. Went to a nice garden, huge garden, and it was just beautiful, beautiful moment. But we're sitting down, we're eating, talking, and we're talking about the kids. And she was telling me how there are challenges in the kids' maturity that we have to recognize, not just recognize, but interact with. And okay, that means your kid made a dumb decision, horrible decision. And you have to know that their maturity level is conducive for them making that decision and interact with them knowing with that knowledge. That is hard, even harder. I'm saying everything is hard. Yeah, it is hard. It's really hard because because you've been through certain things before. You've seen certain things before. And now you're trying to tell them so that they don't make those same decisions, and they do, and they make them worse than you and continue. And it's like, yeah, it's frustrating. But she mentioned that, and that's still a challenge for me, but it's something that I know I have to do, because if I don't, then I'm going to do the same thing, because I'm looking at long term now. I got some other situations that I'm dealing with the same nature. And I see the result of not being willing to see a different perspective, not being willing to look at long term versus short term. Yeah, we can shut some stuff down for ourselves. We can mess some stuff up for ourselves. Real talk. We don't learn how to mature, which is a lifelong process. not going to look at somebody as, oh, they're mature over a certain period, one moment, and think that's it. No, this is a lifetime process. And I always talk about 3 pillars: finances, discipline, and health. Maturity, y'all. Maturity, being able to say, yup, I see the long term. I'm going to analyze it before I make this short-term decision. Challenging, but it's necessary, in my opinion. It's necessary. If you watch this podcast, you are an individual that I know likes to be challenged or likes to listen to things that are challenging or deep, not surface level. So you are one that wants to mature, to learn how to mature. Join the party. I'm there too. Thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate y'all jumping on this podcast. 150 Challenge. This is exactly what it's about. It's about maturing. It's about not accepting the excuses that we've created, or culture, or the things around us, the systems around us, not allowing those things to control the narrative anymore, but being able to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, yo, man, I need to really change something. Yo, woman, I need to change something. I need change. And what used to happen, what I used to do ain't working. It's just not working. It hasn't worked for years. And some people are okay with being where they are. This podcast is not for you, and I'm okay with that. There's another podcast out there somewhere for you. This is a podcast for people who really want to change, who are tired of the status quo. There's one song I used to listen to back in the day. I forget the group, but The Ordinary Just Won't Do. You know, it's a gospel song. You know, I need a love that's pure and true, like this, you know, like the song says. But the ordinary just won't do in this. It's like, yo, something got to give, because this ain't working. So thank you again so much for joining. This is the 150 podcast. Reach out to me if you're interested in learning more about the 150 challenge, taking 150 days, taking 3 pillars in your life and challenging yourself to get busy. Right. I'm doing this challenge right now. I think I'm in day 75 and struggling, y'all. I'm going to share some more information about that. Struggling in a good way, though, you know, but 150 days, 3 pillars, and, you know, you have an accountability partner, system on the back end, all that stuff is set up, and you go through the process, you know, the idea is breakthrough. Ideas break through in areas of your life. And so I'm going to be sharing more about this as we move forward. Got a vlog coming out that's going to share some physical, so you can actually see some things. I'm actually going to try to see if I can put something in next week. I'm trying to get my man. I'm not going to shout him out, but it's a brother that, you know, is really tight on living healthy in the whole. Now I'm trying to get him on this podcast. Hopefully I can get him on next week. Also, I have what's coming up is my accountability partner. My guy, I'm gonna put him on here. Simple. He already agreed to do this. If it's not, it's probably either me, him, or the health guy next week. And we're going to see where we go from there. I'm going to continue to have people on here, but we're going to continue to talk about this particular topic right here, because this is challenging, but it's a necessary conversation. And I'm going to dive into some specifics, whether it's relationships, finances, discipline. We're going to dive into some specifics and kind of break it up a bit, because it's easy to talk about it at the general level and lose a lot of things. I want to go deep into specifics and talk about some of my struggles and how I've had to overcome certain things over a certain period of time and still needing to overcome things. So again, thanks so much for joining. I'm going to wrap up because I can continue to go on and on and on. And how long have we been going? Oh, we haven't been going that long, but it's all good. I'm still going to wrap up, and we'll jump back in next week. Thank you all so much for joining the 150 podcast. Hey, if this content helped you, subscribe, please subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to grow my audience, but that's not the biggest thing. But yeah, it would help if you liked and subscribe and share this with somebody that you think will be a blessing to, and that will go from there. All right, like I say all the time, like I rock out all the time. Live 150, praise God. Live 150, we out.
Fitting the system, underlying this problematic conditions. Y'all been falling for this fakery, dickery, dot. TikTok, alien invasions, I'm really losing my patience. All these signs and gimmicks, y'all just be falling for it. Demons and blindfolds, I've been blinded this whole nation. Y'all just be dying for it. My eyes always focused. I give all my praise until he pulls me. It's the God that broke the thing.